A Manhattan millionaire met a single mother of 3 in the most unlikely place, and what happened next changed both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about class lines that split a city into glitter and grit. It's about second chances, about refusing to be defined by the worst day you've had, about love daring to cross a street it was never meant to cross. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where you're watching from, because this is one love story you'll never forget. The fluorescent lights hummed inside the 24-hour laundromat on Myrtle and Classon. Outside, Brooklyn's winter wind gnawed the dark. Inside, the air smelled of detergent and wet denim. The door coughed on a stubborn bell, and Adrian Vale stepped in with a garment bag that didn't belong in a room full of vibrating machines and mismatched chairs. He wore a wool coat that looked like you could lean on it, a watch that murmured, in platinum, and the kind of assurance that came from knowing his emails could move numbers that changed neighborhoods. Smoke still clung to his shirts from an electrical mishap in his building. His housekeeper was out of town. Morning meetings loomed acronyms, term sheets, a polished promise of the future. He needed clean clothes. He needed anonymity. He got neither. A toddler slept in a second-hand stroller near the counter. 2 other kids, a girl with pink socks peeking from sneakers, a boy with a chipped front tooth and a restless knee, had built a fort from baskets. Behind the counter stood their mother, sleeves rolled, hair in a practical knot, the sort of tired that made room for a smile. "Machines take card or quarters?" Adrian asked, hand already on his wallet, instinctively solving with money. "Card," she said. "Cash if the reader's moody." Her eyes flicked to the garment bag. "You sure that thing wants to make friends with these dryers?" "It survived worse boardrooms," he said. "Boardrooms," she repeated, filing the word away without judgment. "Okay, Mr. Boardroom, use number 7. Number 9 eats buttons." He swiped. The machine gulped his shirts. He tried to stand like he belonged, which was to say he didn't. The laundromat had a rhythm that ignored him. He answered an email, drafted another, then noticed the girl Luna. He'd later learn, glancing at the sleeping toddler and the stubborn clock. "You live around here?" he asked, clumsy to blunt. "We live where the rent doesn't argue," she said. "I'm Maya, that's Luna, that's Theo, and the sleeping tornado is Sophia. We close at 2. But if your dryer has opinions, we won't throw you out." "I'm Adrian," he offered. The name usually built bridges. Here it sank without a sound. An older man pushed in and said the back faucet was leaking again. Maya grabbed a wrench from under the counter like it was part of her hand. Adrian followed because something in the air had shifted. The machine's hum overlaid with a faint hiss. Water where it shouldn't be. The back room was a corridor of pipes and cardboard soap. The leak wasn't a polite drip. It was a thin, angry stream arcing from a corroded joint. Maya twisted. The wrench slipped. Her knuckles met metal. She hissed and steadied. Adrian slid off his coat, braced the pipe while she adjusted. Her fingers were quick, competent, carrying the ghosts of 1,000 small fixes. "Who taught you?" he asked, like she said. "And the internet, and Mr. Castillo before he retired. He owned this place. Machines are like stubborn people. If you listen, they tell you what they need." The joint surrendered. The spray sagged to a sulk when they returned to the front. Luna had tucked Sophia's blanket tighter. Theo pretended not to be proud of having swept water into a neat lane with the back of a dustpan. "You didn't have to do that," Maya said quietly. "I wanted to," Adrian said, surprised to hear how true it sounded. He was used to rooms where money rolled invisible around problems until they wandered off. This felt like gravity. Honest Artie bought the kids animal crackers from the vending machine that ate singles and sometimes gave back to Luna, split them evenly, and tucked the lion into Sophia's fist. Theo eyed Adrian. "Are you famous?" "In some spreadsheets," he said. "Not the fun kind. The kind with zeros." Theo pressed. "Too many zeros," Adrian admitted. "Not enough other things." Maya studied him the way you inventoried a donated coat, weighing warmth against hidden costs. He folded his shirts more carefully than boardrooms had ever required and watched her ring up a customer. Watched her not look at the tip jar labeled bus fare for emergencies long enough to want it. "You own this place?" he asked. She shook her head. "I manage at nights. Clean during the day. Drive a school van when they need me. I sleep on Thursdays." She smiled, and the joke carried more fatigue than laughter. "Mr. Castillo's nephew owns it now. The rent keeps going up. Machines cost what cars used to, but people still need clean shirts for interviews, so we keep going." A sketchbook lay under the counter, edges frayed. When the kids drifted back to their baskets, Adrian nodded at it. "You draw." Maya hesitated, then opened it. Cityscapes bloomed in pencil, a Q train trembling through winter, pigeons strutting in front of a bakery, the skyline cut from fog, faces too, ordinary and luminous because attention had blessed them. "These are good," he said, which barely scraped the truth. "Alive practice," she said. "One day I want to illustrate for articles, books. My mom said I always drew a way out. Turns out the way's longer than I thought. You show them." "Sometimes I tape one in the window," she said, nodding toward a drawing of a boy waiting at a bus stop, keeping the cold from looking in. "People smile. They still pay with quarters." Metal complained outside. Water roared. Maya and Adrian looked at each other, then bolted for the door. Down the block, a city crew had cracked a hydrant. A valve failed. A river the color of streetlights slid toward the sidewalk. The laundromat's threshold sat an inch above Mercy Lunatio backroom. Maya called. She grabbed the stroller. Adrian snatched bags off the floor. Towels wedged under the door. Power strips lifted. The shop vac dragged like a stubborn dog killed the main, he shouted. But Maya was already at the breaker. The water kissed the rubber strip and thought about it. The towels darkened, keeping the secret. Theo narrated the flood to himself in a whisper that made him brave. Sirens tried on the distance. Neighboring shops shouted into the cold. For 20 minutes, the city made a little river and then remembered itself. The stream thinned. Towels held. One machine burped a final rotation that sounded like applause. Maya leaned on the counter, exhaling. She looked at Adrian, and for a second, class didn't matter, only that both had hands and used them. Thank you, she said again, with a different weight. Anytime, he said, and felt the word settle somewhere unguarded. At first, when he'd stepped in and seen the stroller and the jar and the hour, a reflex had twitched. His hand went for a bill, as if he could tip fate. He caught himself and held the door instead. The look Maya gave him small surgical assumptions cost, and he put the money away, unsure what the right kindness looked like. A draft slid under the sill. The bulbs flickered, lending everyone halos and stealing them back. A bus sighed at the curb. The city made its ordinary music. Steam, a far train, someone on the phone negotiating love or rent as if they were different things. So what do, Adrian? Maya asked, courtesy returning after the emergency. Invest in ideas, he said, then admitted. Buildings too. I'm supposed to make futures happen. I'm supposed to, she said, tasting the phrase. Heavy. Some days it drags me, he said. My mum used to say the city takes as much as it gives, Maya said, wringing a towel. But it will always give you a corner if you ask nicely and sweep it yourself. You sweep a lot of corners, he said. All of them, she answered. And her smile reached all the way to tired. Luna brought a crayon drawing a cat shaped like a potato wearing a crown and set it beside Maya's pencil skyline for your office, she told Adrian. Best acquisition I'll make all week, he said, and meant it. He set his folded shirts into the garment bag like a man setting down a decision he hadn't made. He wanted to tell Maya the truth. He wanted to promise everything and promise nothing and do it before the bell coughed again. Luna handed him the lion cracker as a totem for courage. Theo asked if zeros made noise in his head when he tried to sleep. Sophia snored. Proof that some battles wait their turn. He began, and the word carried more freight than it could. He looked at Maya, at the sketchbook, at towels bruised with water along the door, at a city where every favor wore a string. Outside, the hydrant hissed its last. Inside, time narrowed to a seam he could either step through or pretend he didn't see. He cleared his throat, felt his business card burning on the counter, felt morning coming like a deadline, and said, "There's a gallery downtown." Adrian finished, the sentence landing softer than he intended. They host community showcases once a month. I know the owner. I could put in a word. Maya's brow rose, cautious. You mean my sketches? In a place with wine glasses and price tags. In a place where people look, he said, and maybe buy. She folded a towel with military precision. That's kind of you, but we don't need. It's not charity, Adrian interrupted. It's a door you choose whether to walk through. She held his gaze a moment longer than comfort allowed, then looked away. I'll think about it. The bell coughed again. A man in a parka shuffled in with a bag that looked ready to split. Maya moved to help. The conversation filed under things we don't rush. Adrian left with a lion cracker in his pocket and the image of her hands bracing the pipe, still in his mind. The week churned. Adrian's office in Midtown was a temple to glass and intent, where assistants navigated calendars like pilots and investors called from time zones still drinking their first coffee. He reviewed proposals for luxury developments, all renderings of sky gardens and infinity pools. Yet his mind kept rerouting to a laundromat in Brooklyn, to a sketchbook that made the city less abstract. By Thursday, his assistant Clarissa knocked with an envelope. Numbers for the Greenpoint project. He flipped through. The final page held a note in neat print. The storefront next door to the lieutenant's lease, ending in 3 months. Potential for expansion. The address tightened his chest. It was 5 doors from Maya's laundromat. Maya's Thursday was the opposite of glass and intent. The morning began with the school van refusing to start, followed by Sophia refusing to eat anything but cereal shaped like moons. Luna's ballet class called to say tuition was overdue. Theo's teacher sent a polite reminder about the winter coat drive, which was code for he needs a warmer one. By the time her shift at the laundromat started, the machine's hum was almost a lullaby. She drew between loads, erasing the same line twice, thinking about a gallery with wine glasses. She didn't see Adrian until he was leaning on the counter, his coat dusted with snow. You again, she said, aiming for casual. Lose another housekeeper. No disasters this time, he said. I was in the neighborhood. Midtown counts as this neighborhood. Today it does, he said, and set a paper bag on the counter. Inside were 3 small boxes from a bakery whose windows fogged with sugar bribes. She asked peace offerings, he said, and maybe a reminder. She opened the first box, croissants, still warm. The second, a tart dusted with powdered sugar. The third held a pastry shaped like a swan. Do I look like someone who eats swans? She asked, but her smile betrayed her. There for the kids, he said, glancing at the back where Luna and Theo were drawing a maze for Sophia to crumple. She pushed the boxes aside. About the gallery, I'm not asking for an answer now, he said. Just come by on Saturday. See it. She hesitated. And if I don't? Then you've had good pastries for nothing. She almost laughed. Almost. Saturday arrived with snow that blurred the skyline into a memory. Maya layered the kids like onions and took the train to Soho. The gallery was white walls and tall windows, its air smelling faintly of citrus and ambition. Adrian met them inside, dressed in dark wool that made him look like part of the exhibit. Glad you came. Maya scanned the painting's bold colors, sharp lines, prices that made her dizzy. These aren't sketches in a laundromat window. They weren't once, he said. Every artist starts somewhere. A woman in black approached her, lipstick as precise as her questions. Adrian, you've brought guests. Maya, this is Celine, the owner, Adrian said. Celine, this is the artist I told you about. Celine's gaze sharpened. Show me. Maya almost said she hadn't brought anything, but Theo, grinning like a co-conspirator, pulled her sketchbook from his backpack. Celine flipped through slowly. The room's hum dimming. Bees have soul, Celine said finally. We could use soul. Maya's heart thumped. What would that mean? A slot in our March showcase, Celine said. 2 pieces, maybe 3. Maya looked at Adrian. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't claiming victory. He just looked like a man who'd held a door open. The train ride back was quieter. The kids dozed against her, the sketchbook on her lap feeling heavier than its paper. She wasn't sure if it was hope or trouble. That night, as snow turned the street silver, Maya sat by the window and drew the gallery not as it was, but with her work on the walls, the city's reflection tangled in the glass. On Monday, Adrian signed papers for the Greenpoint project. The adjacent storefront, he noted, would be valuable. He told himself it was just business, but in the margin of the page, his pen traced the outline of a lioncracker. By the end of February, Maya's pieces hung in the March showcase. The laundromat regulars stopped by to ask how it went. Some even took the train to see. Adrian was there too, in the corner, pretending to study another painting. Afterward, on the sidewalk lit by a cold moon, she said, "You did this." "You did," he said. "I just pointed." "I don't like owing people," she said. "Then, don't," he replied. "Just let me buy you coffee." She almost said no, almost. The coffee became dinner. Dinner became a walk along the East River. She learned his father had built his first fortune on shipping, his mother on social events that made shipping seem inevitable. He learned she'd been 19 when Luna was born, that she'd worked 3 jobs without missing a single bedtime story. They stood on the promenade, the skyline glittering like a promise, and for a moment, the class divide between them felt less like a wall and more like a bridge. But walls don't vanish, they wait. 1 week later, Maya found an envelope under the laundromat door. The return address was a law firm. Inside was a notice. The building's lease would not be renewed. The property had been sold. Vacate by June. Her stomach dropped. The new owner's name was printed in black at the bottom. Vale Properties. She stared at it, her hands cold, her mind racing between the children's faces, the machine's hum, and the man who'd promised doors without strings. The man she'd started to trust. She didn't wait for him to come by. She didn't call. She folded the notice into her coat pocket, locked the laundromat, and walked into the sharp night air. The city around her suddenly feeling bigger, louder, and far less kind. Adrian didn't know until 3 days later, when he stepped into the laundromat and found the counter empty, the lights off, and the bell silent. He stood there, the lioncracker still in his pocket, wondering how quickly a bridge could turn back into a wall, and how far he'd have to go to tear it down before it was too late. The phone rang in Maya's apartment. She let it outside. The snow began to fall again, soft and relentless, covering everything in white that could not hide what lay beneath. Maya ignored Adrian's calls for 4 days. She wasn't ready for explanations, especially ones that might sound like the truth but feel like excuses. The laundromat still ran, though she avoided her usual shifts, swapping with a coworker, and keeping her head down. It was Luna who finally broke the silence. "Mom," she said one night over dinner, "are you mad at the man with the coat?" Maya glanced at her eldest, who was cutting Sophia's spaghetti into toddler-sized bites. "I'm deciding," Maya answered carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups need to think before they talk." Theo piped up. "He brought us pastries." "That's not evil." Maya almost smiled. "No, it's not evil. But sometimes good pastries don't mean good choices." Adrian spent those days calling Celine, canceling meetings, walking into his office and staring at the notice from the law firm as if the paper might confess to something he didn't know. He hadn't been told the laundromat was part of the Greenpoint deal, at least. not in a way that registered. It was buried in the acquisition paperwork, a line item, one of dozens, but Maya wouldn't care about the paperwork. She would see only his name at the bottom. On Friday night, Adrian drove to her building in Bed-Stuy. Snow lined the stoops like white punctuation marks. He rang her buzzer. No answer. He texted, "We need to talk, please." No reply. Saturday morning, he walked into the laundromat. She was there, sleeves rolled, hair in that practical knot, eyes fixed on the dryer display. "I didn't know," he said, skipping hello. She looked up and it was like looking at a locked window from the wrong side. "But your name's on it. I bought the lot for the Greenpoint project. The storefront was part of the sale." "I didn't connect." "You didn't have to connect," she cut in. "You already had more than enough." Her voice wasn't loud, but it landed hard. "I'll fix it," he said. "You won't lose this place." "You can't fix what you don't understand," she said, turning back to the dryer. "This isn't just a business. It's where people come when they can't afford broken machines, when they need quarters for the bus home. It's where I keep a roof over my kids." "I get it," he said, but the truth was he did not fully, not yet. That night, Adrian sat in his penthouse. The city stretched below like an electric map. He opened his laptop, pulling up the numbers for the Greenpoint project. Selling the laundromat portion at cost would make investors furious. Leasing it back at a loss would make his board impatient. But keeping it and pushing Maya out was unthinkable. Monday morning, Maya found a letter slipped under the laundromat door. "Maya, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a meeting. Give me an hour and I'll show you I mean it." She didn't respond right away. But that evening, when Luna's ballet teacher mentioned the studio was looking for sponsors, something shifted. Maybe, she thought, it wasn't about forgiving him. Maybe it was about seeing whether he was the kind of man who could meet her halfway. They met in a cafe near the East River, one of those places with exposed brick and overpriced tea. Adrian was already there, a folder on the table. "I drafted a proposal," he said before she could speak. "Vale Properties will sell the laundromat back to a community trust or trust at the same price I paid. You'll own it completely." Maya blinked. "And why would you do that?" "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "Because I bought a building without knowing what I was taking from it. And because you matter to me more than any project." Her instinct was to doubt him, but the paper in front of her wasn't just words. It was a contract that could make her, for the first time, not just an employee here, but the owner. The deal took weeks. Lawyers shuffled papers. The community trust was set up. Maya signed, her hand trembling slightly, and walked out into spring air that smelled of rain and beginnings. Adrian was waiting across the street, leaning against a lamppost. "You're officially your own landlord," he said, smiling in that way that reached his eyes. "I guess I am," she said, "but I still don't owe you coffee." "Then maybe I'll earn it another way." The thaw between them was gradual. He'd stopped by the laundromat with pastries not as bribes, but as gestures. She'd let him fix a stubborn dryer, laughing when he got soap on his coat still. Neither said the thing that hung between them until one night in May, when the city was warm enough to breathe without hurrying. They walked along the river, the skyline reflecting in the water. "You scare me," Maya said finally. "Why?" Adrian asked. "Because you're from a world that can take without noticing, and I'm from one that notices every time." He looked at her, the lights flickering across his face. "Then maybe we build a new world, one where we both notice." Maya didn't answer right away, but her hand brushed his as they walked, and for Adrian, it felt like the start of something that might be worth every wall he'd have to break. Back in the laundromat, Luna's drawing of the crowned cat still hung in the window, faded slightly by the sun, and for the first time Maya looked at it and thought, maybe, just maybe, crowns didn't always come with a cost she couldn't afford. The summer heat arrived early, settling over the city like a heavy hand. The laundromat's fans worked overtime, rattling in the corners. Stirring air that smelled faintly of soap and cotton. Business was steady, and for the first time since she could remember, Maya didn't feel the clock ticking down on her future. The deed to the building, her building, was framed behind the counter. Customers noticed, some congratulated her, others asked if it meant she'd raise prices. She laughed and told them she was still the same woman who folded their sheets for free if they were running late. Adrian stopped by more often, but it wasn't the grand gestures that stuck with her. It was the way he knew to distract Sophia with a story while Maya counted quarters, or how he'd sweep the floor without being asked when the rush was over. The gulf between their worlds was still there, but smaller now, like a bridge they were building plank by plank. One Saturday, Maya invited him to the park with the kids. He hesitated. Children made him nervous, but said yes. They spent the afternoon under an oak tree, watching Luna teach Theo cartwheels while Sophia toddled toward the ducks. Adrian brought a picnic basket that looked like it belonged in a magazine, but when Maya teased him about it, he grinned and admitted the lemonade was store-bought. At one point, Theo asked him if he'd ever climbed a tree. "Not since I was your age," Adrian said. Theo's eyes lit up. "Then you have to do it now." It wasn't graceful, but Adrian did it, suit pants and all. Maya laughed until she cried, snapping a picture she'd later look at more than she'd admit. The warmth between them grew, but so did the whispers. Some regulars at the laundromat eyed Adrian like a threat, their distrust of men in suits as ingrained as the hum of the dryers. One evening, as Maya locked up, her neighbor Mrs. Ruiz pulled her aside. "Men like that, they don't stay," Mrs. Ruiz warned. "They take what's shiny and leave when it's dull." Maya thanked her and went upstairs. But the words sat in her chest like a stone. 2 weeks later, Adrian invited her to a charity gala at the plaza. "No pressure," he said, "but I'd like you to see my world." She wanted to say no. She didn't belong in chandeliers and champagne, but something in his voice, hopeful almost, she made her agree. The night of the gala, Adrian arrived at her door with a dress, bag borrowed, he assured her, reading the protest in her eyes. No strings. When she emerged in the deep blue gown, Luna whispered, "You look like a princess." And even Maya couldn't deny the reflection was someone different. The gala was a blur of glittering dresses and murmured deals. Adrian introduced her as the best artist in Brooklyn, and she felt pride bloom despite the nerves. But then she overheard 2 women near the bar. "That's the laundromat woman," one whispered. "Interesting choice for Adrian Vale. Must be a phase," the other replied. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She excused herself, stepping out onto the balcony to breathe. The city spread below, familiar and distant all at once. Adrian found her there. "Too much?" he asked. "Just different." She said, "Your world has sharp edges." "So does yours," he said quietly. "But maybe together we could make them less sharp." Back in Brooklyn, Maya sat at her kitchen table long after the kids were asleep. The gala had shown her a glimpse of his reality, a place of power and polish, but also its shadows. She wondered if he could truly step into her world the way he'd asked her to step into his. The answer came sooner than she expected. One humid Thursday, the laundromat's main waterline burst mid-morning, flooding half the floor. Maya called the plumber, but he was hours away. To her shock, Adrian showed up within 20 minutes. Off, sleeves rolled, hauling buckets like any other neighbor. They worked side by side, wringing out towels, moving machines, laughing at the absurdity of it all. By the time the plumber arrived, they were soaked and grinning. "You could have just sent someone," Maya said as they leaned against the counter. Dripping, "I wanted to be here," he replied, simple and sure. That night, Maya looked at him differently, not as the man with the coat in the Skyline apartment, but as someone willing to get his hands wet, literally, for her and her world. And for the first time, the idea of us didn't feel impossible. But the city had a way of testing hope. A week later, a headline appeared in the business section. "Vale Properties eyes luxury development near Bed-Stuy train line, the proposed site, a block from the laundromat." Maya's heart sank. Maya read the headline twice, hoping she'd misunderstood, but the article was clear. Vale Properties plan to transform several storefronts and apartment buildings into high-end condos, complete with rooftop gardens and exclusive retail. She knew what that meant. Higher rents. Longtime residents pushed out, the neighborhood losing pieces of itself one brick at a time. Her phone buzzed. Adrian saw the article. "Can we talk?" She didn't answer. Instead, she spent the day at the laundromat, folding laundry with more force than necessary. Customers murmured about the news. Mrs. Ruiz shook her head. "First they buy the land, then they buy the soul." That evening, Adrian showed up. No coat this time, just a white shirt rolled to the elbows, looking like he'd come straight from an argument. "It's not what it looks like," he said. "It looks like you're turning my street into something it's not," Maya replied, her voice steady but cold. "The project's still in the proposal stage. I didn't choose the location, my development team did. I can change it, can you?" she asked. "Or will your investor scream too loud?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not the man I was when we met. I don't want to erase your world, but I can't undo my name being tied to this unless I fight for it, then fight," she said. "Not for me. For everyone who can't just pack up and move to a Skyline apartment." Over the next week, Adrian did something few in his position would. He attended community meetings. He listened while residents voiced fears about rising costs and losing the businesses that had been there for decades. He took notes. He didn't wear a suit. Maya watched from the back, arms crossed, trying not to let the sight of him sitting among her neighbors chip away at her anger. By the third meeting, the tide began to shift. Adrian proposed altering the development plan, entirely focusing on vacant lots instead of occupied buildings, adding affordable housing units, and allocating grants for local businesses. It was a risk. His board pushed back hard. "You're giving away profit," one executive complained. "I'm investing in longevity," Adrian countered, "and I don't need a board that can't see past quarterly numbers." When the revised proposal went public, the neighborhood buzzed. Instead of erasing storefronts, the project would renovate the crumbling community center, improve public transit access, and create spaces for local artists. Maya's laundromat wasn't just safe, it was slated to get a new facade courtesy of the city's revitalization grant. She found Adrian outside the laundromat the next day, leaning against the doorframe. "You did it," she said. "We did it," he corrected. "You pushed me too." Their closeness deepened after that. He spent more evenings in Brooklyn, sometimes helping Luna with homework or letting Theo explain the rules of whatever game he'd invented that day. Sophia, once shy around him, began climbing into his lap with picture books. Still, there was hesitation between them, something unsaid. It finally cracked one late night in the laundromat. They'd just closed, the hum of the last dryer fading. Maya sat on the counter, sketchbook in her lap. Adrian leaned beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. "Sometimes I wonder," she began, "if we're just pretending the gap between us doesn't exist." "I think about that too," he admitted. "But I'd rather build a bridge than measure the distance every day." She turned a page in her sketchbook, revealing a drawing of the two of them herself, barefoot in the laundromat, him in rolled sleeves, standing side by side. The caption beneath read, "Building the bridge." Adrian smiled, touched a fingertip to the paper, and said softly, "Then let's keep building." For a while it felt like they might actually make it. Summer nights were spent on rooftops watching fireworks, afternoons at the park, mornings with coffee and croissants at the counter while the kids made blanket forts, but the city wasn't done testing them. In early September, Adrian's father, Arthur Vale, the sharp-eyed patriarch who built the family's empire, returned from Europe and requested a private meeting. Adrian suspected what it was about. He was right. "You've been in the papers too much," Arthur said, his tone a mixture of irritation and calculation. "These community projects, this laundromat woman. It's not the image Vale Properties needs. She has a name," Adrian replied, jaw tight, "and she's not for your approval." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "You're risking the family's legacy for a fling." "It's not a fling," Adrian said, his voice cold, "and maybe the legacy needs to change." 2 days later, Maya received an envelope at the laundromat, no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping from the society pages. Adrian, at a high-profile business dinner, seated beside a glamorous woman in a silver gown. The caption read, "Adrian Vale and longtime family acquaintance, heiress Charlotte Renford." Maya stared at it for a long moment, her throat tight. Maya set the clipping down on the counter, her fingers trembling. Customers came and went, unaware that her mind had been knocked off its tracks. She told herself it was probably nothing. Business dinner, public relations, the kind of thing men like Adrian couldn't avoid. But the photo didn't show avoidance. It showed Adrian leaning in toward Charlotte Renford, smiling in a way that looked easy, familiar. By the time her shift ended, she'd convinced herself she needed answers. That evening, Adrian walked into the laundromat carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use a." She slid the clipping across the counter before he could finish. He glanced at it, then met her eyes. "I can explain." "I'd like to hear it," she said, her voice calm but cool. "It was a dinner my father arranged," Adrian said. "Charlotte's family is a major investor in one of our European projects. I didn't know she'd be there until I walked in, and you couldn't leave. It's business," he said. "Walking out would have started a dozen rumors, none of them good for the deals we're trying to close." Maya studied him for a long moment. "So you stayed?" Smiled. "Let someone take your picture." "I stayed," he admitted, "but I didn't let them take anything from me that matters." The tension between them lingered. Adrian called more often, texted in between meetings, but Maya's replies were shorter. She hated feeling like she was waiting for him to prove her wrong or right. It was Luna who noticed first. "You don't laugh as much when Adrian's here," she told her one night while drying dishes. "Before, you did." Maya kissed the top of her head. "Maybe I'm just tired." But the truth was heavier. A week later, Adrian invited her to dinner at a quiet restaurant in the West Village. She almost said no, but curiosity and maybe hope got the better of her. The table was by a window, candles flickering between them. He didn't start with small talk. "I know you're pulling away," he said. "I don't blame you. My world has a way of looking worse from the outside than it sometimes is on the inside." "It's not just your world," she said. "It's the way it can drag you back, even when you say you've changed." He reached across the table, palm open. "Then help me stay out of it." Her eyes searched his, looking for any trace of performance. She found none. The following weekend, Adrian showed up at the laundromat with all 3 kids, and Maya hadn't agreed to this. But they were giggling before she could protest. He spent the afternoon helping Luna design a flyer for her school's talent show, teaching Theo how to fold a fitted sheet badly, and reading Sophia's picture book so dramatically that even customers laughed. Maya watched from the counter. If it was an act, it was a good one. But something in her gut told her at WASN single quotes 2 weeks later, she received a call from Celine at the gallery. "I have good news," Celine said. "A client saw your pieces in March and wants to commission you for a full series." "It's a big deal, Maya." Maya almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "Completely. They want city-like people, real streets, your style." The commission meant more income than she'd ever earned from art before. It also meant long nights, balancing work and kids. Adrian noticed. "I can help," he offered. "You've helped enough," she said. "This one's mine." But fate and the city weren't done testing them. One rainy Tuesday, as Maya locked up, a man in a suit she didn't recognize approached Maya. "Alvarez?" he asked. She nodded cautiously. "I'm here on behalf of Renford Holdings," he said. Charlotte Renford would like to discuss an opportunity with you, one that could take your art international. Maya blinked. Why would she want that? She's seen your work, the man replied, handing her a business card. And she believes you have potential. She's hosting an exhibition in Paris this winter. We'd like to feature you. The offer was staggering. Paris, exposure, money. But it also came from the woman in that photo, and accepting it meant stepping into Adrian's world on someone else's arm, figuratively, if not literally. That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table staring at the card. Was this genuine support, a test, or something sharper? When Adrian came by later, she didn't mention it. Not yet. She needed to decide if this was a door she wanted to walk through or one she needed to slam shut. Across town, Charlotte Renford sipped champagne in a penthouse suite, scrolling through her phone. She smiled faintly at a message from Adrian Vale. Step 1 is in motion. Maya kept the business card tucked in her sketchbook for 3 days, checking it more than she cared to admit. Every time she saw it, she heard Charlotte's name whispered in the back of her mind like a warning. On the 4th day, she decided she couldn't keep it to herself any longer. Adrian was at the laundromat, sitting on a stool by the counter while Sophia tried to braid his hair. Maya set the card in front of him. He glanced at it, then looked at her. Where did you get this? A man came by after closing. Said Charlotte wants me in her Paris exhibition. His jaw tightened. Of course she does. What's that supposed to mean? It means this isn't about your art, it's about getting to me. Maya folded her arms. And you know that because Charlotte doesn't do anything without an angle, Adrian said. And my father doesn't involve her unless he's trying to prove a point, which is that I don't belong here, that you don't belong with me. She stared at him, unsure whether to believe this was strategy or paranoia. So what? You think I should say no? I think you should do what's right for you, he said. But I also think if you walk into that exhibition, you're walking into a trap. She hated how much the idea of Paris tempted her. She'd never left the country. The thought of seeing her work on a gallery wall in another language was intoxicating. But was she ready for the strings that might come attached? 2 nights later, Celine called. I heard about the Paris offer, she said. Maya blinked. Word travels fast. Charlotte reached out to me directly, Celine continued. She wants me to encourage you to accept, said it would be good for your career, and you. I think it's good if it's on your terms, Celine said. But knowing Charlotte, be careful. Adrian's world and hers collided again a week later when she agreed to meet Charlotte for coffee alone. She told herself it was just to hear the details. Charlotte arrived exactly on time. Wearing a tailored coat the color of champagne, she smiled warmly, but her eyes had the cool assessment of someone measuring a painting before deciding if it belonged on her wall. Maya, she said, it's wonderful to finally meet you. I've admired your work since the March showcase. Thank you, Maya replied, worry. Charlotte leaned in. Paris is an opportunity people wait their entire lives for. It would be a shame to turn it down because of misunderstandings. Misunderstandings, Maya asked. Charlotte's smile didn't waver. Adrian is complicated. His life is complicated. But you could be extraordinary on your own. The words were silk with a hidden blade. That night, Maya told Adrian about the meeting. He didn't hide his frustration. She's trying to separate us, he said. My father's probably cheering her on. Maya crossed her arms. Or maybe she's right. Maybe I could be extraordinary without all this mess. His expression softened, but there was a tightness in his voice. You already are. But I'd like to think we make each other better, not smaller. In the days that followed, the tension between them grew. Maya buried herself in work for the commission, sketching late into the night after the kids were asleep. Adrian threw himself into projects, staying later at the office. They saw each other less, spoke less. The distance felt dangerous one Friday evening. While locking up, Maya noticed a man in a dark jacket leaning against a lamppost across the street. She'd seen him before, once near the kids' school, once by the laundromat when Adrian wasn't around. Her stomach tightened. She went inside, locked the door, and called Adrian. I think someone's watching me, she said quietly. I'll be there in 10 minutes, he replied. When he arrived, his eyes scanned the street, but the man was gone. I don't like this, Adrian said. If my father's involved, this could be pressure, or worse. You'd think I think he wants you gone, Maya. And if he can't charm you out of my life, he'll scare you out of it. Maya looked at him, the weight of both fear and defiance settling in her chest. Then maybe it's time we stop playing defense. Next morning, Adrian made calls ones he hadn't made in years. Allies in the business world who owed him favors. Journalists who'd been waiting for a story. If his father wanted a fight, Adrian was done pretending it wasn't happening. But before any of that could unfold, Maya got a call from Theo's school. Her son had been in an incident at recess. When she arrived, Theo was sitting in the principal's office clutching his backpack. A man tried to talk to me through the fence, he whispered. He said he knew you. He said your life would be easier if Adrian wasn't around. Maya's blood ran cold. Maya crouched beside Theo, her hands steady even as her heart thundered. Did you tell anyone else what the man said? She asked. Theo shook his head. I just ran to Mr. Alvarez by the swings. He told me to come inside. The principal assured her that security had been notified, but Maya barely heard the rest. She called Adrian before they even left the school grounds. He arrived in minutes, his expression dark, jaw clenched tight. "This stops now," Adrian said. "I don't care what it costs." They went straight to Maya's apartment, where Adrian made a series of calls that were short, sharp, and final. When he hung up, he looked at her with a determination she hadn't seen before. "I'm cutting ties with my father's board. All of them. I'll liquidate what I have to. I'm done playing by their rules." Maya crossed her arms. "And what about your legacy?" He met her eyes. "You are my legacy." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Adrian moved his meetings out of the Midtown Tower into a shared workspace in Brooklyn. He hired security to keep an eye on the laundromat and the kids' school. Word spread quickly through the business world. Vale Properties was being restructured from the ground up, with community-focused development at its core. Arthur Vale called once. Adrian didn't answer. Charlotte sent a single text. "You're making a mistake." Adrian deleted it without replying. But despite the steps he took, the fear in Maya's chest didn't fully ease until 2 weeks passed without another sighting of the man in the dark jacket. Slowly, life began to feel normal again, if normal could describe the strange mix of laundry loads, art commissions, and whispered plans for the future. One evening in early November, Maya brought her sketchbook to the laundromat counter. While Adrian helped Theo with homework, she flipped to a fresh page and began to draw not buildings, not cityscapes, but the 5 of them: her, the kids, and Adrian in the park under the oak tree. The kids were laughing. Adrian was looking at her. When she was done, she tore the page out and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Something we're building," she said. "Our corner." Winter came fast that year, the city glowing under strings of holiday lights. Adrian took them all ice skating at Bryant Park. He was terrible at it, clinging to the rail while the kids darted circles around him, but Maya couldn't stop smiling. Later that night, they stood at the edge of the rink, watching the snow fall. "You know," Adrian said, "I've been thinking about Paris." She raised an eyebrow. "That was a while ago." "Still," he said, "I think you should go, not because of Charlotte, but because it's your art, your moment. I'll watch the kids. Will FaceTime every day." Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something warmer. "You'd do that." "I'd do anything that lets you be exactly who you're meant to be." By spring, her Paris series was complete. The laundromat was thriving, the community center renovations underway, and Adrian's new development company had its first project approved. A mix of affordable housing and local business spaces in a neighborhood the old Vale board would have ignored. Maya boarded the plane for Paris in May, her sketchbook in her carry-on, her heart steady in a way it hadn't been in years. Adrian stood with the kids at the gate, waving until she disappeared into the crowd. 2 weeks later, she was back, stepping off the plane to see him waiting in the arrivals hall. The kids ran to her first, but when she reached Adrian, she dropped her bag and kissed him like the distance had been years, not days. That summer, they hosted a small block party outside the laundromat. Music, food, and an art display featuring Maya's Paris work alongside sketches of their neighborhood. People danced in the street. Kids chased bubbles. Near the end of the night, Adrian took the mic from the DJ and called Maya to the center. "I used to think success was about building taller towers," he said, looking at her. "Now I know it's about building something, that lasts, something that matters." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "And I want to build it with you." The crowd gasped. The kids grinned. Maya's eyes filled. "Yes," she said, before he even asked. Maya's music swelled. Again, Maya glanced up at the string lights hanging between buildings, their glow warm against the summer night. In that moment, she knew the city would always be sharp-edged, unpredictable, and loud, but she also knew they had built something strong enough to stand in the middle of it and not just survive, but belong. If you loved Maya's and Adrian's journey, rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for more incredible tales of love against all odds. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the bridges we build are stronger than the walls we tear down.